Hey listeners, it's Kara, your host. After 176 amazing episodes and hundreds of book recommendations, I wanted to make it a little bit easier for you to find your next great read. The Bookish Lights Roadmap is your guide to all 175 podcast episodes, sorted by genre so you can quickly find the stories that fit your reading mood. From picture books to adult novels and everything in between, it's the perfect way to explore past episodes and discover new favorites. You can find your copy of the Bookish Lights Roadmap at www.bookishlights.com/read/roadmap, or just click the link in the show notes. Hi, I'm Kara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights. In each episode, I chat with one bookish guest as we take some time to sample and savor the pairing recommendations from their bookish flight. We hope to give you suggestions to cultivate your TBR list and nurture your leisure time through books. In today's episode, I am chatting with Connie Richardson. Connie is the debut author of Rapid City Summer. She teaches middle school English and language arts in the Chicago suburbs. She has published articles, short stories, and blog posts for the National Council of Teachers of English and Scribbler. Additionally, Connie is a former graduate and current mentor in the Mary Adkins MFA alternate program, the Book Incubator. When she is not teaching or writing, she enjoys fly fishing out west, running, coaching cross country and track and field, and cooking for her family and friends. Welcome to the show, Connie.
Thank you, Kara. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes. Well, I feel like we are so much more than our bios. So can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, I feel like the bio covered a lot of the basic things, but I'm also a wife. I got married in July,
Yay.
which was super great. Yeah, wedding was awesome and just the perfect day and absolutely wonderful. Yeah, and I'm a middle school ELA teacher. I've been teaching for 11 years now, which is crazy that much time has gone by already. But I teach seventh graders and I absolutely love it. It's such a fun age. It's, they're getting a little more mature, but also like not totally too cool for school. So, they're fun and just all the things that we can talk about and do in the classroom with reading and writing. Never a dull moment, super fun every day. Yeah, and then just love the outdoors too. So love fishing, running, anything where I can be outside in nature is kind of like my escape and nice stress relief.
Yeah, I don't think my husband and I realized how much we love being outside until we moved away with the Navy because we're not huge winter sports people. So I think growing up in Chicago, as I'm sure, and I'm saying this because you're there,
Yeah.
like you just don't have access to a lot of outdoor activities if you don't love winter sports, you know?
Correct. Yeah. And especially if you're not, yeah, into winter, the outdoors, where again, my husband and I really embrace it. Again, fishing, we love ice fishing. So we
Yeah.
have a lot of local water around here and also in southern Wisconsin because we're in the northern Illinois suburbs. So we like to go ice fishing a lot in the winter too. So we try to embrace all of the seasons, getting outside the best we can. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we were younger when we lived there, but now we're like, okay, if we were to go back when he's done with the Navy, we're like, we would just have to learn to embrace it, I think. Because
Yeah.
now we realize how much we do love being outside. And we've been pretty lucky with where we've lived, that we've lived in fairly mild climates, that we can be outside majority of the year with just the right
Yeah.
clothes.
Yeah.
But, well, you had your debut novel, Rapid City Summer, come out this summer. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about Rapid City Summer?
Yes, yeah. So Rapid City Summer is my debut young adult novel. And I call it young adult because my protagonist is 15. And I'm really looking to kind of target this kind of gap per se between middle grade and young adult literature. So I really wanted to tell a story that my seventh graders and like middle school readers who are kind of ready for a more mature type of story than your typical middle grade, but without, some of the content and things you might see in really popular young adult novels. So that was really like, age appropriate for like that 12 to 15-year-old reader who wants stories about, kids who are their age or a couple years older, again, without some of the content things you might
Yeah.
see in some young adult works, which again, nothing wrong with that, but it's just, not for every reader, right? So
Yeah.
Rapid City Summer is a coming of age story about 15-year-old Natalie who grew up in the Chicago suburbs, and her mom gets a new job and they move to Rapid City, South Dakota. And it's also the end of Natalie's freshman year of high school, where she kind of feels like she's made her friends, like she's part of the track team. She's found her footing in her high school, and then everything gets uprooted, totally out of her control. So she's not happy about the move at all, and really kind of pessimistic about the idea of moving to South Dakota. And she's like, I don't even know what's here besides Mount Rushmore, and what am I going to do here, and what people am I going to meet? And that's basically how the story starts. And then when they move into her house, she meets her next door neighbor, Adam, who's a year older than her. So there's a little bit of this boy next door, crush part of the story, a little
Yeah.
bit of romance. But then through her friendship with Adam, Natalie learns to fly fish. And I'm not sure if a ton of people know, but South Dakota is actually a great fly fishery, especially
Okay.
in the western part of the state in the Black Hills. So they have a lot of fly fishing adventures, which is something Natalie's never done. And like I said, she's a runner, but she wasn't really, into, fishing or the outdoors in that way. And as she kind of broadened her perspective and her mindset about living in South Dakota, all of these, kind of opportunities and things kind of, come her way, and she really finds herself through fly fishing and the outdoors. So that's a little bit about Rapid City Summer.
That's awesome because I feel like it encompasses. Sometimes I feel like there's books too. Like I see this in my kids because I have a 10-year-old boy and a 7-year-old daughter.
Hmm.
And like there's books that are so definitively like the girl books. And then
Yes.
there's also the boy books, right? And I feel like for obvious reasons, right? Like different writers can appeal to different ages, but I feel like this book encompasses quite a bit where I feel like it could appeal to both.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so then like I said, I'm a teacher. So the beginning of the year, I always kind of do a little bit about me and introduce myself. So this year it was like I got married, so all the girls were super excited about that. But then I always show my fishing pictures, so the boys are like, "Oh," and then we kind of bond over that. And
Yeah.
but even the girls get excited too, and they're like, my grandpa has taken me fishing, or like I've done this with my dad a little bit, and it's definitely one of those things where even though fishing might at first sound like, a quote unquote boy hobby, I think it's something that girls are definitely interested to in a different way, and even if girls aren't totally into fishing, I still there's a lot of appeal for girls and boys in this book, definitely. So, and I've had my students read this book.
Yeah.
I don't like force it on them, but when they found out the book was coming out, I did have some students read it, and everyone's loved it, even my most reluctant readers, which is funny. I'll go up to kids and be like, "So what'd you think of it?" And I'm like, "You can be honest with me. You're not going to hurt my feelings." And they're like, "No, I really, really liked it. I really enjoyed it." So, and to me, that's kind of just like the highest compliment, since like that's really my target audience of who I wrote this book for, and to see them enjoying it, is a huge compliment.
Yeah, and I love that you're getting that on the ground information because I think as authors, sometimes we don't always have the gift of being teachers, right? And so you're getting
Mhm.
that feedback right there. And I think a lot of times we're like, okay, where can we get the feedback? Like we want it, but how can we get that?
Yeah, especially because with, any kid lit types of books, your audience is the kids, but also, like the parents and librarians and stuff. But the kids aren't the ones writing the reviews, it's the adults
Yes.
who are. So it's cool to kind of be like in the trenches with the actual audience who this book is for, and to get, those that bit of feedback from them, since they're not the ones writing, the Amazon and Barnes and Noble reviews or the Goodreads reviews. And just to hear that word of mouth feedback is great.
Yeah. Well, and now we're listeners, just so you have an idea, we're in September. How has it been going this summer with the book promotion and getting married? I mean, my goodness, you've had a lot going on. Like,
It's been quite the year. Yeah, I did not. I mean, I never thought I'd be promoting my first book and getting married in the same year. It has been, all of my wildest dreams coming true this year. So can't ask for more than that. It's been busy and wonderful in the best way. So I've been able to do some bookstore signings and bookstore events, and just really cool to connect with local readers that way. And I have a conference coming up in a couple of weeks where I get to network with some local librarians. So I'm hoping to start doing more school visits in the
yeah.
future. Which I have a lot of experience of planning at my own school as well.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, anytime we have authors in at my school, they always say like their favorite thing is to be with the kids and talk about their books with the kids and do writing workshops with the kids. So I'm really looking forward to having more of those opportunities in the future and, talking about my book and reading and writing with as many students as I can and getting them excited about reading and writing and creating.
Yeah. I am thinking of like my little self in seventh grade would have thought this was the best thing ever. But back in the day, we didn't have authors' visits, right? But that would be so, I would just have been, died and gone to heaven.
Yeah, yeah, and they're always so much fun because at first for the kids, it's like, hey, we're not doing like our typical lesson today. I like get out of class and I get to go like to this assembly and see this thing. But we've had a lot of really fantastic authors at my middle school. We've had Lindsay Curry and Dusty Bowling. A couple years ago, we had Margaret Peterson Haddix. We had
Wow.
Gordon Corman. Years
Yeah.
ago, right before I got hired at my school, we had Tim Green. So like just fantastic kidlit
Yeah.
authors that come through and they all bring such unique perspectives and fun topics that are connected to their books, but also that kids can relate to. So just because we're both from the Chicago area, Lindsay Curry, who writes kind of mystery books, but she also has a newer series out that's about these kids who solve like escape rooms. That's really fun. But she's from the Chicago area as well. So when she does her author visit, she talks
Oh,
about different parts of Chicago that are haunted. So all the kids get really into that.
yeah.
Like, oh, I've been there, but like I didn't know that fact about this place. So she makes some really cool connections with the kids that way. And and then they get more excited about like reading these books because it talks about these things and yeah, and just really I think kind of brings reading more to life, especially for reluctant readers. Like when they can get
Yeah.
excited about those things and make those connections, then they're more excited to kind of dive into the stories and see what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Then they're like, there's a little tidbit of information that's intrigued them, and they're like, I want to know more.
Yes, and I want to go find where it talks about that part in this book, and then they
Yeah.
keep reading, and yeah, and it's kind of like their gateway in almost.
Yeah, that's such a cool little piece. And I feel like kids love factoids, right? They love those little
They
bits of
do.
facts and like, oh, I can t teach you something that you don't know. So this is, and they feel like that's the best thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of like those little moments to, and that's why we love doing these author visits. It's when you think about those core memories of school, it's not, years from now, you're not like, oh, I remember writing like these structured paragraphs in ELA. It's like, no, you remember the author visits and you remember these unique learning experiences and to be able to provide that for kids that's still, connected to the curriculum and connected to learning standards, but
Yeah.
still just providing that fun, unique experience. Those are the things that are going to stick with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what did you learn about yourself through writing Rapid City Summer?
Um, Quite a few things. I think one thing that I wasn't expecting when I wrote Rapid City Summer was that through writing, I was really able to explore, I know, some things, not that I was like necessarily struggling with, but you kind of get to, through fiction, explore some different maybe parts of your life that you're kind of working through or seeing how you could test out certain situations in fiction. So to give an example, but without giving too much of a spoiler, another part of Rapid City Summer that I'm really proud of are the family kind of values and structure in this book. So, and Natalie, when she moves to Rapid City, her family moves 10 minutes away from her estranged grandma. So Natalie doesn't really have a relationship with this grandma. You find out why in the story, but over time they do start to form a relationship. And then later in the story, Natalie goes on a fly fishing trip to Montana for a long weekend. And then when she comes home, she finds out some news about her grandma that kind of changes the trajectory of the rest of the story. And in my real life, my grandma passed away a couple of years ago from dementia. And it was, a long battle. She had it for quite a while, but my now husband and I, every summer, because we're both teachers, we travel out west and go, fly fishing in South Dakota, Montana, all sorts of states. We make a different itinerary every year. But I would always worry that when I would be away, something would happen to
Yeah.
my grandma. And I'd have this fear that, I'd get some call or some bad news and I'd be on the other side of the country. And how would I navigate that? So, that is something I kind of explored in Rapid City Summer. And it was It was really kind of cathartic to write about that and just kind of like explore those feelings through writing and put that part of the story, put that kind of my story into Rapid City Summer too. So having kind of those opportunities, to bring real life experiences, both good and the not so good, into the story because everywhere that where Natalie and Adam go fishing in the book, those are all places I've been
How
fishing
fun.
too. And so, kind of bringing the happy, fun memories into it as well. There are some places where I have changed the names. I'm not giving up all of my fishing spots. So you guys can't go find them all on your own. You guys
No
have
more
to do.
trade secrets on that.
No, I'm not giving you all my secrets. There are some real names I've left, like the Gallatin River, that's huge in Montana. Like you can go anywhere and catch fish. It's my favorite river in the entire world. But there are places in South Dakota where the names you're going to see in the book are made up names, and I'm not giving up all my spots.
Yeah.
So there are a few secrets that I'm keeping to myself. But just as I was writing all of the fishing scenes, it was really fun kind of replaying them in my mind or looking at pictures and trying to figure out how to, make them as vivid and connectable to the reader. Because I know fly fishing is not something a lot of people have done, especially, in the Midwest or maybe in other parts of the country. So I did my best to try and bring a more niche topic to this book. And I guess that's also something I learned about myself, is that something that I really like to write about, but also that I like to read about. I really like a book that has like some sort of niche topic that I can really learn something about or that you don't see a lot in real life. So for this, it was fly fishing. And even just like another random example, when I kind of talk about books with my students, there's another book that they all like. It's called Slider by Pete Hopeman, I think is how
Okay.
you pronounce his last name. And the main character in the book, he's into competitive eating. So we have some fun competition, some
Yeah.
fun conversations about competitive eating, and then we'll like look up records about competitive eating. So like any books that have kind of those unique hobbies or topics, I think I really enjoy reading them. But now I've learned I like writing about really more niche topics too.
Yeah. And then, like you said, they're ripe for discussion and unit studies and things that you can go explore a little bit more than just
Definitely.
reading that novel, which again
Yeah.
opens up the world for the kids too, right? Where they're like, oh, I never knew about this. And now there's this whole world of fly fishing, like you said, or
And just kind of those opportunities to broaden your worldview through books, which is again something else I enjoy as a writer and a reader, and even just thinking about as I was writing Rapid City Summer, I really tried to, like I said, this was a book I wanted to write for that gap between middle grade and young adult. And I think as I kept writing, I think I put myself more on a mission of like, what else do I want to put in this book that I don't see in a lot of other
yeah,
middle grade or young adult books. So is fly fishing. I thought about setting, like there's not a lot of books for these younger teen readers that are set in the West. So to bring them to South Dakota and Montana, places that maybe not a lot of kids have gone, or they've, just done like the typical road trip through the Badlands and
sure.
not Yellowstone, Mount Rushmore, where, those are all great spots, but to kind of show them a little bit more, was really cool because to get to travel through literature, I think, is a fun way to at least, get that interest about different places and kind of, like I said, broaden your worldview.
Yeah, absolutely. And how fun for you and your husband that you're on the same schedule, that you can then go take that large, like a large chunk of your time, where most people
Exactly.
are like, oh, I get 10 days or something would be the max.
Yeah, where it's like our summers, like we are not teachers who will ever teach summer school. So I'm putting
Yeah.
that on the record now. Like that's not going to be us. And we really, I mean, we both coach sports as well during the year. So it's like our 9 months that we're teaching and coaching, we're working really hard. And then our
Yeah.
summers are really just to like go unwind and relax.
Yeah. You're all in for the 9 months, which I think is fair. And then you take some
Yeah,
time, which is
exactly.
very important.
Yeah.
Well, what is your wish for readers? What do you hope they'll take away from the book?
I hope they take away from Rapid City Summer. I mean, one of kind of the taglines of the book is to live life outside your comfort zone. And I think for Natalie and also for me, which I think is something I learned about myself writing this book, I can be very stubborn about a lot of things. And I think at the beginning of the book, like Natalie was really stubborn about her mindset of moving to South Dakota as well. I mean, the first line, which I love my first line of my book, is literally Natalie saying, "What's so great about South Dakota besides a mountain with some old guys' heads on it?" So
Yeah.
already she has this very like there's nothing here for me. Like she's already like writing it off. And I think when you can kind of let go of those preconceived notions and have an open mind about different things, whether it's a place, a hobby, a person, an idea, when you can kind of have that open mind, that's where we really get to grow and find out who we are and have those experiences that we may not have had otherwise, or connect with people you may not have connected otherwise. So my hope for the reader is that, they can also take that worldview as they read the book, to live life outside your comfort zone, let yourself take those chances. Don't just have this narrow preconceived notion of something, and to give it a chance, because you might find out you really like something, or enjoy something more than you would think otherwise.
Yeah. I'm thinking as you're talking about that I feel like that's a skill that's learned, don't you think? I mean,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
I definitely wasn't born that way where I was just open to receive everything, but over time that I see the gifts of when I was open to something versus kind of dragging my feet or being, like you said, stubborn about what I was already gonna, assume it was going to be, that every experience has, yeah, it's just surprised me, right? That it's so much bigger than I was ever thinking it would be. So I think over time I've realized, just embrace it, take it for what it is, like just see what is going to be on the other side before I'm already, going to my assumption.
Exactly. And like you said, it is something I think that's learned, and it's a difficult thing to learn. But like we talked about a little bit earlier too, books are a great way to learn those lessons and have those conversations. So if readers can see Natalie taking those chances, and overall how good things, turn out for her by the end, without, spoiling things or whatnot, that the reader can try taking some of those chances in their everyday life too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about who you are as a reader. What genres do you enjoy reading?
I read pretty much everything, except I'm not much of a sci-fi or fantasy
Yeah,
reader. The most I would do is like Harry Potter, and I'm like that's my scope of fantasy. I've tried. I think for me, I really like books that have a more realistic world that I can
sure.
connect to or ground myself in, like just learning a whole new world and different types of people and fairies and vampires, and like that's not for me. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to take my brain capacity to do that while I'm reading. It's good for other people who do. It's not for me. So anything realistic, all age ranges. I mean, I love reading middle grade and young adult, not just because I'm a middle school teacher. I genuinely love reading those kidlit books. Just regular fiction for adults, historical fiction. Yep. I'm a very broad reader, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I have been surprised. Speaking of being surprised, I never really read middle grade and maybe a few YA here and there, but now that I have my kids that are in that age, and reading there, I have loved some of these books, and they're so much, they're quick and they're fun. And I'm like, why did I dismiss them? Speaking of dismissing things because you have a preconceived notion about them.
Yeah.
So, but I have thoroughly enjoyed a lot of middle grade over those past couple years. And I'm like, wow, I should have just kept going here.
Yeah, yeah, which will be when we get into the book flight. That's some of what I brought to, is thinking about how, even though books are labeled, and really that's something else I learned too, going from like a reader and a teacher into the published author space, that a lot of these labels are truly just for marketing purposes, honestly,
Sure.
and just a place to like put the book on a shelf. But when you really read a lot of these, middle grade, young adult books, there are so many things that I think adults will really enjoy about them too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, how in your business do you find time to read?
Um, I think just like anything, you have to prioritize it. So
Yeah.
for me, it's getting off the phone, not watching Netflix at night, And I do, at the end of the day, reading is my way to unwind. So it's like I'm not staring at a computer anymore. I'm not staring at my phone, getting off the screens and just escaping into a book is really how it truly is kind of an escape for me
Yeah.
after a long, busy day. So it just, even if I'm only reading for 10 minutes or just like one chapter or whatever. So that's how I fit it in. And audiobooks, honestly, because I have about a 30-minute commute to work one way. So I can get through a decent amount of an audiobook, especially when you speed it up a little bit. So
Yep.
audiobooks are a great hack too if you have to commute and you're struggling to read. So those audiobooks, to me, they count. That's reading 100%.
Yeah. And I always thought it was like, then I didn't have to sit there. I mean, back when I was commuting, I guess, it was a lot more radio. We had less streaming music. And
Mhm.
so I was always trying to find something on the radio. And then when I discovered audiobooks, it just took away that, like, well, perfect. I've got what I need for the 30-minute drive, not like flipping around to find something to listen to.
Yeah, or like here, especially old school radio, and when you get to a commercial, and then you have to try and find something else until the
Yes.
music comes back. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's such a good hack. Great tip.
Yes.
Well, you have brought 3 books with you for your book flight. Can you tell the listeners how you chose them?
Yeah, so I guess there's a little bit of a story that goes with how I chose these books. So not long before, we're recording this podcast, I had the honor of having my book chosen for a local book club. It was actually my mother-in-law, her book club chose Rapid City Summer to
Fun.
read.
Yeah.
So, and and I think it goes without saying they're not my intended audience. So I was very curious how they would receive my book, and I was just blown away with how much they connected with Rapid City Summer and the things that they related to in the story, even though it was a book about a 15-year-old girl, just the things that these grown women could relate to and that they connected with and the things they took away, really touched me and was something that was unexpected for
Yeah.
me as an author. Like I wasn't anticipating, kind of grown woman connecting with the book in this way. And I also had another writer friend who, read Rapid City Summer, and who's also older, and she kind of said the same thing. She's like, I wasn't anticipating like connecting with the book in this way as much as I did. So, my book flight, I kept thinking about that, and I'm like, what middle grade and young adult books would I think people of all ages really connect with and relate to for different reasons? So, that's how I came up with the books that I brought
Fun.
for my flight today. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Well, what's the first book you brought?
So the first book that I don't physically have because I can never keep any copies available is The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. So I mean, if we just think about kind of where we're at in culture right now, like this book has blown up, and I mean, it's been
Yeah.
out for a while, but I think with the series, I've been talking to people about this too, and I think there was an article, I forgot what magazine it came out from, but basically just like why are millennial women like so obsessed with The Summer I Turned Pretty, like myself included. I actually listened to the audiobook, and Lola Tongue read, she narrates all of the books, and she's who
Okay.
plays Ellie in the show. And she just does a great job. It really feels like you are sitting down, like that you are transported back as a teenager, and that you're kind of like, talking to your best, teenage girlfriend, like, late at night by a bonfire, just like, hanging out and kind of, talking about all of these things. But, I think there's a lot that people can connect to at all ages. I mean, my seventh graders are reading the series, and my librarian literally can't keep it on the shelves. And I have multiple copies in my classroom, and I can't keep any copies. That's why I don't have a copy with me because they are all gone
Yeah.
constantly. But I think for kids, just again, they like reading. I think about kids who are a couple years older than them, and that is, The Summer I Turned Pretty. So thinking about like what are the things coming up for them, and what's life gonna be like and look like for them. And I think we all kind of have that nostalgia for like, that ideal summer where you have, the crush, and you're on the beach and just kind of living, living this, kind of life. And then even for adults, just kind of, looking back on almost those quote unquote simpler times where you were
Yeah.
just a teenager in the summer, hanging out with boys and your friends, and navigating all of those firsts, and what that looks like. So I think there's a lot relatable for a lot of readers there, and just it's an easy read, it's fun. Yeah, so that's why I picked The Summer I Turned Pretty. for my first book.
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that is it like a lower YA, would you say? Or the
I'd
upper
say
middle
the
grade or
I'd say lower YA, especially for the first book. So I
okay.
have to admit, I still have the next two books to read, and I'm not letting myself watch the Amazon series until I finish all of the books. So I know
Yeah.
I'm a little behind, but I finally jumped on the bandwagon, and I understand. Like I've got it. I get why it's
Yeah.
why it's a big thing right now.
I was just gonna say that I didn't even realize it was a YA novel.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
fun. Okay, great. I love
Yeah,
that you
so
brought
even just
that.
right there, these stories that are kind of, blowing up and,
Yeah.
and just, popular and in culture. I mean, even think about the Hunger Games and how that's even coming
Yeah.
back with all of the prequels. I mean, Sunrise on the Reaping was excellent, and The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, not my favorite, but it was
Yeah.
still good and just fun to kind of
Part
keep
of the
those
story.
part of the story, but it's fun
Yeah.
to like keep those going. And like I read those growing up, and now my students are reading them and they're making the movies again. So it's cool to see all of that continue.
Yeah,
So.
I love it. Okay, what's the next book you brought today?
All right, my next book, I'd say this is more upper middle grade, and this book is really special to me for a lot of reasons, and it's called The Canyon's Edge by Dusty Bowling.
I
We've
love that
also had
cover.
Dusty, yeah, it's such a fun cover, yeah.
Yeah.
So Dusty Bowling has also visited my school twice for this book. So
Okay.
for multiple years, we've used The Canyon's Edge as a one book, one school, which means every student in the book, every student in our school, and we have over 600 students in my middle
Wow.
school.
Okay.
And they all get to read this book. So they receive a copy of the book. They get to read um, this book in their classes in some, way, shape, or capacity. And what the story is about is a girl named Nora and her dad, and their family really likes the outdoors. So they like to go hiking and camping and do all of these things. At the beginning of the story, it's Nora's birthday, and they are going kind of rappelling and climbing down this canyon. And it's Nora and her dad, and her mom passes away. And you find out later in the story what happened to her mom. So they're rappelling down this canyon, and they're in a slot canyon, and a flash flood comes through, which can be really catastrophic in a slot canyon. And Nora's dad gets swept away, and then Nora is now stranded in this canyon by herself with no way to contact her dad since there's no self service
Mm.
where she's at, and she has to try and find her dad and get out of this slot canyon. And in the story too, it's a novel in verse, which is a popular kind of subgenre of middle grade and young adult. So there are books that are written in poetry format and different kind of structured poems and
Yeah.
haikus and different shapes and these different formats. So it reads really quick, but also through the format of these poems, a lot of the storytelling takes place with like bigger words or, like I said, things and shapes and repetition of words. So you're really kind of getting a lot of the story through how these poems are structured and written.
Okay.
But it's also a lot of Nora kind of battling her inner demons as she's, kind of struggling with how and why her mom died and overcoming some of that trauma and finding the strength she didn't realize she had as she's surviving and trying to get out of this
Yeah.
slot canyon. And like you said earlier, with books that appeal to boys and girls, this is definitely one of them. So even though Nora is a female character, like boys relate to this in a lot of ways. And we get to talk about, again, unique settings. We learn a lot about slot canyons. We talk about all the different desert animals and different survival techniques. And we've done a lot of cool things at my school with this book too. And, the teachers love it. So again, thinking
Yeah.
about universal read for any reader, but then there, we kind of, practice some different things like Nora had to do, because I don't want to give away spoilers, like Nora has to do this when she's in the canyon. So we're going to
Yeah.
try and do some, so we kind of try and bring some of those events from the book in real life, which has been super fun. And then when Dusty has visited our school a couple of times, she lives in Arizona, so then she'll
Okay.
bring like rattlesnake skins and tarantula skins and some
Oh,
of those
cool.
things that are brought up in the book too, so the kids can see those in real life. So yeah, so that book is a treat. It's such a fun read, and every year that I've read it and taught it, I get something new out of it or find some new things to pick apart. So yeah, so The Canyon's Edge, highly
Okay.
recommend.
I am sitting here thinking like it is already so hard to write a book. I can't imagine then doing it in verse. Like that.
I don't think I ever could. I definitely could not. I know
That's
it's
a
not
whole other
the skill set
layer.
for me. Yes. Yeah, no,
So,
it's a beautiful form of storytelling, and I, give credit to every author who can do it. Yeah,
yeah,
but the kids really, like I said, relate to stories that are told that way because they read quick and there's less words on the page,
yeah,
so they kind of fly through them. But also all of the kind of analytical thinking of reading through a poem that you're kind of tricking them into doing in some ways is
yeah.
is fun too. Yeah.
So do you guys every year do a one book, one school? Uh,
And if we don't do a one book, one school, we at least do an author visit where we then have
Okay,
like a lot of copies of the book that the kids can read, or at least teachers can teach like parts of the book in
sure.
their classes before the author comes in. So with the Canyon's Edge, that we've been able to do is a one book, one school. And then a couple of years ago, we also had Megan Freeman who wrote Alone. So we did that as a one book, one
Okay.
school, which was fun. So.
Yeah, I was like, that's such a cool concept. I like that. They do one book. I don't know if they call it one library here in San Diego, but all the, there's many branches of the San Diego Public Library. We have multiple library systems here too. And they'll do, it's one book something. Oh, actually, I have a notepad from them. One book, one San Diego. I'm like, hold on, it's
Oh,
right
that's
here.
awesome.
But and then
Yeah.
they obviously all the libraries carry that book and they have multiple copies of that. And they do that. They announce it usually. They just announced it at the Festival of Books in August what it was going to be. And they do obviously an adult pick and then they do I think a picture book and then maybe a YA or middle grade. So they try to hit all the age.
Hit all the age groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
it's
And just
fun.
sort of fun community building event that like everyone's reading the same book and getting to talk about it, and all of the events that you can do and activities around the book is really special.
Yeah, it's such a neat concept. Okay, so what's the last book you brought today?
All right, the last book I brought is a little bit of a throwback, but it's a book that I read
Yeah.
growing up that I think people can really still enjoy and appreciate today, which is The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants by
Yes.
Ian Brashares. So this was one of my favorites growing up. And one thing that really sticks with me about this book that I also tried to put in Rapid City Summer was just a good friendship story. I think as girls, boys, like everyone who's a younger reader, especially in their teens, like friendships can be really, really tricky, and just, what makes a good friend, how to be a good friend, what do those good friendships look like, and
Yeah.
when friendships aren't kind of serving you anymore, how do you navigate a friendship that's growing apart? And do you choose to stay in that friendship, or do you not? I just love the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants shows four very different young women, and how they work to keep their friendship going. Obviously in this book it's with a pair of magical pants that they all pass around and have this connection through, which I think is such a fun, unique element. But the four girls in the book, and how they navigate growing up but still prioritizing their friendship, I think is a lesson that is important for everyone, no matter how old you are. But then even when I was writing Rapid City Summer, that's something that's, I think, important to me, and not just as a teacher, as I'm seeing, obviously I'm teaching reading and writing, but I'm
Yeah.
also helping, these kids through all sorts of different things. And, a lot of the, quote unquote drama you see is, things navigating friendships. Like, we're friends one week, we're not friends another
Yeah.
week. Like how do you process all of that? And again, I think through reading, that's a really important way to kind of work through some of that. So I made sure in Rapid City Summer 2 to include some examples of really good female friendships, and what does that look like as, a young teenager, but also when you have friendships growing apart, how do you try and keep those going? And then ultimately when it's not working out anymore, what do you do about that? So I think just stories about friendship are super
Yeah.
important. So and even, years later, I mean, this book came out in 2001 and it's still a story that I think about. So if you have not read The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, definitely pick that one up.
Yeah. And that's what I honestly remember from middle school is all of the, I'm not going to call them troublesome friendships, but but like navigating all of that was so hard. And then you're in and out and, it was such to me, it was really challenging years, and so to have something like that to help you through that and see yourself maybe in stories, right? I think when we can see that
Mhm.
we're not alone in our struggles, that alone is a little bit of balm for our hearts.
It definitely is. And even with the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, you're seeing, again, these four young women who are, celebrating with each other. They're kind of, sad with each other, and kind of navigating the highs and lows of life, not just like when they're physically together, but when they're apart, and what does it kind of look like to be a friend in all of those seasons. And just, all of the humor in it and just the realness of the story too. Yeah, it makes it a one that's, stuck with me for so long.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for bringing those books with you today.
Of
Well,
course.
listeners will have links to all of them in the show notes in case you're driving or commuting and you're not writing them down. I'll have all of that in the show notes. So, how I love to end our show is with our bonus pairings, which are speed rounds you can answer really quick. Are you a rereader?
I wish I was. I am in the terms of like when I'm teaching, I obviously have to like reread books as I'm kind of like refreshing myself on certain things, but in my real life, I'm not a rereader.
Yeah,
I want to be, but there's so many other books that I really want to be reading that all of
same.
the things I want to reread get put on the back burner.
Yeah.
So I wish.
I have the exact same issue. So,
Yeah.
what is one book you've read that has changed your life?
Oh, I had to I definitely had to think about this question, but
Yeah.
the one book that comes into my mind anytime I hear this type of question is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. There
Mm.
is something about a gritty, dramatic sports story that just like hits me to my core every single time. And I actually grew up playing tennis. That was kind of like my first sport that I truly loved. I quit it for volleyball. In retrospect, that was one of the dumbest decisions I ever made. But I've come
Yeah.
back to tennis, and my husband and I play now, and it's something that I want to keep, playing for the rest of my life. But just the character of Carrie Soto and her father-daughter relationship, but just how Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote about sports, and Carrie as an athlete. That's just a book that has really stuck with me, and is just one of my favorite stories. And I guess just kind of a follow-up to that, if I had honorable mentions, would
Yeah.
be I think the Harry Potter series and the Hunger Games series. Those were just books kind of talking about earlier, like reading, making core memories. Like those were books that were core memories for me. Like as the Harry Potter series came out, you would go to like the midnight release at Barnes and Noble of
Yeah.
getting the new book, or like when movies came out, the midnight premieres. And, in the Hunger Games, I remember, as the actual trilogy was coming out and then the movies going along with them, me, my mom, and grandma would like go to the movie premieres and see the movies in the theater and talk about the books together. So yeah, so those are definitely books that have changed my life and have created core memories for me.
Yeah, I was gonna say those core reading memories, like we were talking about way back in the beginning, if you can do that with your kids. So that's great.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
is your favorite place to read?
My favorite place to read is just anywhere where I can be comfy, cozy, and unwind. So I just love to read in bed at the end of the night. Got a really comfy like reading chair in my living room. I love reading outside, like on our back patio. We've got some comfy chairs and just like being in my garden and
Yeah.
reading. Those are probably my favorite spots. Or even just again, audiobooks to me still count as reading. So just
Oh yeah,
going on a long walk and listening to an audiobook, I find so therapeutic. So
absolutely. And lastly, what are you reading next?
so I'm kind of in between books right now, but the next books I have to pick up again, going along with my my book flight, are the next two books in the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy. So it's not Summer Without You, and then We'll Always Love Summer, because I need to get through those so I can finally watch the series.
Yes.
So that is that's what's next for me.
I
Yeah.
love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. I know your time is precious and I appreciate all you've given me.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kara, for just everything you do for readers and for the opportunity for me to be here today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Connie Richardson, including her book flight of middle grade and YA books that can be loved by all ages. We'd love to hear what other books you'd pair with this book flight at bookishflights.com. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Your review not only helps the show, but it also helps the podcast to reach others. Make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to make sure you will not miss an episode. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.